In security, we're operating in a time of unparalleled challenge as emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning redefine the cybersecurity landscape. IDC decision makers are recognizing the benefits of next generation cloud technology to protect and defend against cyber threats. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Dorian Daley, EVP and General Counsel at Oracle. Dorian can share some perspectives on how we're enhancing our relationships with customers as we adopt a service model where customers are shifting the security burden and the risk to Oracle. And Edward Screven, Chief Corporate Architect at Oracle, who's been instrumental in rebuilding our cloud from the ground up, as well as our fully autonomous database, so that customers are equipped to truly protect their data and eliminate human error from their security equation altogether. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to have a conversation, obviously, about security that we think is as broad as it can be in the amount of time that we've got. And I think it's really an opportune time for us right now, because I'm not sure that there's been any point in history where there have been more challenges, more significant challenges, and possibly also significant opportunities in this landscape of cyber threats, data protection, data intrusion, data exfiltration. And so maybe we'll start there, just with a very, very broad question to Edward, my own personal expert, as well as the expert here at Oracle. How do you see the landscape right now in terms of cyber threats and cybersecurity?
Well, it's intense. I mean, if you think about the way that computing and networks and the way that people manage data have evolved over the last 20, 30 years, compute has moved out to the edge, into people's pockets, right? It's moved out into billions of devices that are scattered throughout the world that have network connectivity. Okay, and that means that there's just gigantic amounts of data being generated, a lot of it pretty valuable, and it's moving around all the time, right? And the companies and governments, really their most valuable assets, for the most part, is the information they derive from all that data, right? And that means there's a tremendous incentive among some very smart people to try to get it, and to try to change it, maybe, right, and exploit it, either because for commercial reasons, right, they want to steal credit cards, they want to find out results of a company before they're published, right, or because of their own particular national security concerns, right? I mean, it's no secret that a large part of the most sophisticated cyber attacks are state-sponsored, and that's because the most important secrets, of companies and governments are available, through these networks running on computers that are sometimes managed by people who are overwhelmed by the task.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about how customers, the extent to which customers actually recognize these threats. Do you think that customers generally do recognize the threats?
I do. I think I think if I were to go back, a few years, I'd say not so much. I mean, they knew that they had to be secure, but it was more like not exactly a checkbox thing, but it just wasn't the highest priority thing, right? But now, if I'm a CEO and I've decided to run my systems myself, and I have hundreds of IT administrators, administering lots of different kinds of applications built with lots of different kinds of technologies. One IT admin making a mistake could cost me my job, right? Okay, and so yeah, customers recognize the importance of security, and they recognize that they are in peril.
Right. As I'm talking to customers and potential customers around the world, I find that they recognize that there are these threats too and vulnerabilities in their own security framework, but they're not exactly sure what those threats are. It's the scary thing that's out there. But they recognize they're there. They hear these stories all the time in the press about the latest cyber attack. And they seem to recognize that there is a risk then to their reputation, their ability to instill trust and confidence in their customer base. There's a risk to their ability just to perform their tasks as a company and deliver goods and services. And then there's an overall risk to their ability to maintain financial stability. Can they actually maintain their company as a going concern? So it's a front and center kind of issue for our customers.
So one thing that I didn't hear mentioned in there was privacy.
Yes.
And you know much better than me. What is happening with the regulatory frameworks around privacy?
It's exploding. It's absolutely exploding. And so these issues of privacy, data privacy and data security are inextricably intertwined. They're slightly different sides to the same problem, but what's happening on the privacy side is really an explosion of regulatory frameworks around the world. It really started, I would say, with GDPR in the EU, which established kind of a baseline. We've taken a somewhat different approach here in the US. However, as of late, many more states in the US are instituting their own privacy regimes, some that are a little less draconian, some a bit more draconian. As you probably know, there's a big discussion here in the US about maybe a national privacy legislation and framework. It seems like right now with what's going on in Washington, maybe nothing's going to get done on that front, but there's a lot of discussion among technology companies. And then around the world, I would say that probably most companies are adopting a framework that looks like GDPR, but also has some components of data localization laws, which complicate things even further. My experience when I'm talking with folks around the world, including regulators, is still a lack of sufficient awareness about what the technology can actually do for customers. Mm-hmm. There's still a bit of fear that is a result of lack of information.
Yeah.
What do you think customers are looking for generally from us as vendors? What are the takeaways that you have from various conversations you have with customers?
Well, they're looking for. Frankly, they're looking to make it someone else's problem. They want us to be responsible for providing the fundamental security of their environments and of their data, and they're right to do so, right? Because if you think about this in economic terms, there are just thousands and thousands of large enterprises and governments and parts of governments that have a lot of important data, a lot of systems, frankly, a lot of systems that are maybe not always administered so well, and that are highly heterogeneous, right? It's very, very hard, right, for all of those enterprises to spend enough money each individually to be secure, because the nature of the threat is that attackers are numerous and they're well-funded and they're very sophisticated, right? And so it's like a pack of wolves. You find one weak part of the herd and you go after it. Okay, so how is each and every one of those individual enterprises ever going to spend enough in terms of labor, right, to actually make all those systems secure? The answer is they really cannot, right? But if they look at a cloud vendor like Oracle, and especially Oracle, right, we manage the data of tens of thousands of customers, right? We can definitely afford to spend enough to make those systems secure. It's economies of scale, and it's just this basic, economic question, right? How can we possibly secure ourselves against this incredible threat if all of our resources are dispersed? The answer is we can't. So concentrated resources focused on solving this problem for tens of thousands of customers, we can build secure systems in a way that customers could never dream of doing.
Right. That when I'm interacting with customers, I hear the same notion. How can you help us solve our problem, and how can we make it your problem? So they're looking for different kinds of ways to share the management of that significant risk that they have. I see a lot of customers that are looking at a variety of devices and tools. They're looking at legal protections. They're looking at regulatory protections, maybe getting information sharing from the government. Certainly there's a lot of discussion amongst companies, and certainly many of our customers coming to us to talk about how do you create that security framework within the company and continue to enhance it and to manage it. This is typically through policies and programs and education and training. But those are really things around the edges. They're important for sure. Our customers do want to know about these, but they don't go to that underlying technical issue. So let's talk about that very, very specifically. What's the technology approach to addressing these risks?
Well, when we built our next generation cloud, which is now, I mean, that's the thing that we're deploying customers into. That's the thing that we're selling. That's the thing that we're running ourselves on top of. We realized that we just had to take a different approach than conventional. I mean, what we run in our cloud is different than what other cloud vendors run and what our customers run. So what we have done is that every server, sitting in a rack in an Oracle Cloud data center, right, does not actually have a direct network connection to any other part of the network. Instead, it is connected to to a security processor, a separate computer dedicated to that one application server that mediates all network access in and out of the box. It also takes care of doing things like when the box boots up, make sure it gets a secure image. If we need to re-image the box, it takes responsibility for re-imaging the box. So the security code that maintains the fundamental level of security of our virtualized cloud runs outside of the computer running any application code. And so what that means is that there is no way for an attacker's code running in one of those servers to get out into our network. There's no way for it to compromise the security code that's running in that separate security processor server. Furthermore, there is no way for our code running in that security processor to reach into the application server. The connection between the application server and that security processor is by Ethernet. We have intentionally designed it so it is not on the same bus. We can't reach into the memory of that application server box. They can't reach into our memory either, right? So if a customer is concerned about Oracle looking at their data in memory, we cannot do it, right? That's great. And it's great from both a security perspective and I think just a general assurance perspective. Now that fundamental layer of security is really the basis on which we build up everything else, right? So on top of that, we've built machine learning algorithms to actually look at network traffic and try to understand, and definitely understand, when there are patterns of attack. When we built Autonomous Database, we were very focused on making sure that we completely automated patching with zero downtime. When you run a Linux image in our cloud, we can patch that Linux image for you with zero downtime. Because one thing that's absolutely table stakes for any kind of security is you have to patch right away. You have to patch right away, right? And the thing is, if we don't provide zero downtime patching, customers aren't going to want to patch. They want to keep their systems going. Well, we patch with zero downtime. And that is just fundamentally important to security. I could go on. I mean, we really believe in this idea of defense in depth. So on top of those more fundamental layers, we do things like web application firewalls and other security techniques. But I think those two elements of what we run in our cloud, okay, separating out the application server from the security processor, right, making sure that we can do zero downtime patching, that's really fundamentally different about our cloud between other cloud vendors and us, and also especially our cloud and what customers can do on their own.
So if I followed that correctly, I think what you're suggesting is that customers may actually be taking on some risks that they're unaware of as a result of architecture decisions that are being made by other cloud vendors. Because this is what you're describing is fundamentally different to address some of the issues that we've all already seen in our customer base, where we've seen attacks coming in.
That's absolutely correct. And sometimes it's subtle. Okay, so you've all heard of the various Intel processor flaws, L1TF and other things. So if you were running in an Oracle Cloud bare metal server, you were not vulnerable. You were never vulnerable. Right? Because the only thing running in that server was your code. You weren't sharing that box with anyone else. You weren't even sharing that box with our software. Your code was the only thing running there. Okay, and that I think that just speaks to the fundamental power and importance of the architectural choice that we made. And by the way, those Intel processor flaws, they're not done. There's more coming.
And so when you're engaging with customers, have you noticed a perceptible shift in the way that they view the cloud overall, sort of moving from seeing it as a threat to the security of their data to actually providing a solution for the security risks?
I do. I think there definitely has been a kind of a sea change in general attitude. I mean, like I said a few years ago, when I talked to customers, security was actually kind of an objection, right? They thought like, well, listen, I know you got these other customers, okay, but listen, my data is really important, okay, and I have to really make sure that I check all of these boxes and lock all that data down. Okay, now it's more of like they totally understand that we provide a more secure environment than they do. So many of our customers, though, they do have constraints on things like some regulatory frameworks, data locality and other issues, which we're helping to solve, through making sure that we've got the right certifications for our data center, make sure that we've got data centers in the right physical places in the world.
Let's go back a little bit to when we were talking about sort of architecting the systems. Are there some fundamental concepts or principles that Oracle follows as it's developing and architecting new technologies?
Yeah, I think it's really defense in depth, right? We have the advantage in comparison to basically every other company on the planet, right? That we actually build, every level of the stack. Okay, we build the storage systems, we build the computers, right? We build the operating system and the virtualization software. We build the networking software. We build all the application software, everything, the control plane, everything. And so that gives us the opportunity, to take maybe a more holistic view of the problem than some others might have, right? So when we think about security, we don't just think about security at any one of those levels. We think about it at all the levels. Right, and that's really fundamentally what you have to do, right? I mean, it's like if this lock is breached, what's the next stage that's going to help someone? Like if can we detect data egress out of the application because someone has broken into the application, because or there's been insider threat at some customer, right? I mean, there's just that ability to engineer every level of stack, I think has given us opportunity to make our customers far more secure.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the customer benefits beyond the pure security, taking on some of that security, management of that security risk. Have you perceived that there are other benefits to our customers aside from pure technology? And I'm thinking really specifically about impact on the workforce, because there has been concern in some corners about the impact of AI and machine learning on the workforce.
Yeah, I think what moving to cloud and cloud infrastructure like Oracle's or autonomous database or Fusion applications and other SaaS applications we have, I think what that allows the employees of our customers to do is focus on actually adding real value. I mean, if you think about the life of a typical sysadmin in the old days, what do you really do, right? I mean, you keep the computers running, you apply patches, you do configuration work, right? Is that really adding a lot of value to the business? Is that actually fundamentally different than what similar employees at other companies are doing? No, it's the same. And can you really do such a good job that you're going to have a positive impact on the company? I mean, if you can do a good enough job that you don't cause problems, and that's pretty much the limit, okay? But what something like, say, autonomous database does is it lets Oracle DBAs go from worrying about applying patches, worrying about setting, one of the literally hundreds of tuning parameters of the Oracle database, and say, all right, the part of my job where I actually add value is that I help the business understand how to model data, right? I help the business understand how to use the information to make better decisions. Okay, that's actually adding value. So, using automation through cloud, lets companies overall do a better job of managing information, making better decisions, but it provides opportunities for people who work for those companies to actually contribute in ways which they can't now. I mean, I do not think that moving to cloud is going to reduce the number of jobs for people who are related to technology. It's just going to increase the number of opportunities to really create more value.
Let's talk a little bit about investments. One of the things that I notice is that while our customers are really trying hard to educate themselves about the benefits of these new technologies, they're really still on a learning curve as to how to best secure their frameworks and where to make the best investments to get the biggest bang for their buck.
Yeah.
And we know from a report that Oracle released today, security in the AI realm. I've forgotten what the title is, but we know that a majority of C-suite executives and policymakers think that those investments in IT and security infrastructure are really important, really, really critical. But the larger slice of investments go to human capital, because there is a perception that the biggest threat is really in humans. And so I think this poses an interesting question because what I think you're saying is that the investments really ought to be in the technology in the first instance, because you can get ahead of those threats, including those human errors that create risk for you, and then you can scale those things reliably.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I mean, I saw the same data. In fact, I think I'm actually quoting the press release. You know, the thing that it was so ironic about it is like, okay, you know, on one hand, people say, hey, the source of many of my security issues are human error, and so the way that I'm going to solve this problem is I'm going to go hire more humans. Okay, that doesn't really make sense logically, right? I mean, you know, what we need, you know, to secure our systems is more automation, right? What we need is more homogeneity. I mean, one fundamental difference, I talked a lot about technology differences between our cloud and say, customer environments. But, you know, one thing that's very, very different between you know, our cloud, probably any cloud, and a customer environment is that it is incredibly homogeneous. We have very few different kinds of hardware in our data centers. We have very few different kinds of software in our data center, right? And the reason why we have to do that, you know, the very most basic ground reason is we're running a whole lot of servers. Okay, we cannot possibly manage that entire estate if we have to do it the way customers often do it in their own data centers. It has to be entirely or nearly entirely automated. Right now, from a security perspective, right, that means that there are not so many people touching these systems that could make a mistake that would compromise security. Right? And furthermore, there's just a lot smaller attack surface. You know, we don't have to worry about, you know, 9 different flavors of operating systems and 3 different kinds of hypervisors and you know, 17 different vendors for switches and other networking gear. Right? We have a very small attack surface that we can spend a lot of money defending. Right? And I think that is what customers need to do. They need to minimize their attack surface. And, you know, hiring more people to keep managing the same mess, that's not going to do it.
Yeah, so that minimizing the attack surface and sort of expanding your capabilities in AI and ML, those seem pretty simple and elegant solutions. I think probably the underlying technology and all the effort that went into it is massively more complicated. But when you're talking to customers, what's the single biggest block, you think, to their understanding of the benefits of what these technologies can offer?
I think you know, I wouldn't put it so much in terms of block to understanding. I think it's they're looking for the reasonable transition path. You know, how do I go from where I am now, right? Which is, you know, I mean, for large customers, like sometimes hundreds of bespoke applications, right, deployed on this incredibly heterogeneous set of environments, right? How do I go from that to running on cloud, right? And that's one of the reasons why we've been very focused on when we build our cloud, you know, that bare metal solution that I described, which is like, okay, you've got an application server computer here and a security processor separate. I mean, aside from the very obvious security benefits, another benefit is that we can basically run any piece of software, any operating system, any hypervisor, right, on that server. And so that makes it much easier for our customers to pick up existing workloads and move it into Oracle Cloud because there's just less they've got to change. That's not saying that it's simple and it's easy. I mean, nothing is easy when it comes to like doing any sort of migration on enterprise software. All right, but we've been focused over time and knocking down every kind of burr that we can find that makes it hard to take an existing deployed on-premise application and run it in our cloud.
Right. And are you finding that there's any particular area within our customer base, and I mean in the customers themselves, where we're having these discussions? Is it with the CEO? Is it with the CFO? Is it with the head of HR? Is it with the CTO? Who's it with? Or is it with all of the above?
Typically it's with two classes of people. Mm-hmm. One is the folks you just mentioned, right? I mean, mm-hmm. High-level executive CEOs, CFOs. I mean, depending on the particular offering. Very often, like an LOB head, they want marketing or something like that, depending on like if they're buying a SaaS applications. The other class of people that we spend a lot of time talking to are actually developers, right? The people who are going to be building either next generation ISV applications, right, or just the bespoke developers, inside some of these enterprises. Some of our customers, they actually employ huge numbers of engineers, right? I mean, if you're a bank. Right? I mean, one of your competitive advantages is, the applications that I can build for myself to optimize my business. And so they have a lot of developers, a lot of programmers, right? So we spend time talking to them, to make sure they understand, what they can take advantage of in Oracle Cloud.
Yeah. And we found that as we focus more on the cloud and as we focus more on the security discussion, our relationships with our customers are changing. Mm-hmm. We're much, much closer because we're really drawing them in closer to us, and we really are partnering on taking on the management of all of these risks. And it's been a really healthy development, I think, in the trajectory of the company and the way that we're engaging with our customers. They're quite happy to see that we are really interested in solving their problems and sharing the burden of the solution. Is there let me ask you if there is a sector, whether it's within the US or outside, where you see a slower adoption of cloud technologies?
I would say, the thing that, the areas where cloud technology adoption is slower is where there are, perceived or actual regulatory constraints. Mm-hmm. Because for some of our customers, they find it hard to comply with regulation if the data is not in their data center, right? And so what we're doing to help address that problem is we have something we call Cloud at Customer, right? So we can actually take a piece of our cloud and run it in someone else's data center. One very popular choice so far has been something we call Exadata Cloud at Customer. So you can take that same Exadata service that we run in our cloud, our public cloud, put it in your data center. We still administer it and monitor it and manage it using the same automated tools as we do in our own cloud. And in fact, you have a connection from that machine back to our cloud infrastructure, right? But the data resides in your own data center, and that that is helping a lot of our customers overcome some of the regulatory barriers that they see. For some of our customers too, I mean, if they have they have a lot of internal systems that aren't going to move anytime soon, and they want integration between those applications and Exadata Cloud. Sometimes there can be just like communication channel advantages to having that Exadata be close to the other applications as opposed to remote in one of our data centers.
Right. I've found that in traveling to customer sites and customer forums, there's a lot of interest in Cloud at Customer among those regulated customers, particularly in banking and other financial services industries. They're very, very excited about this offering. And I just recently was at an event in Africa where we had about 400 bankers, which was entirely scary for me to be addressing 400 bankers. But they were very, very interested in how they could utilize these technologies as banks to be able to take advantage of, big data, and AI, machine learning, and be able then to share some of that data and the way that they've analyzed that data among the commercial banks that are within their regulatory purview. So it's really an exciting opportunity, I think. I think we're about running out of time, so let me just end with this question. You know for sure, and I think we probably all know, there's not going to be an end to these threats. If anything, the bad actors will probably get more sophisticated and more bold. So what's the future for addressing these cyber risks?
Well, I think it's cloud, right? I mean, I think, the end game is that for lots of reasons. I mean, just basic economic reasons of how much it costs to run systems, right? But a big part of that, of course, is security. I really believe that almost all customer data, government and private, is going to move into cloud data centers, right? And the advantage that has in security is that the resources of the world who are worried about protecting data will be concentrated in a smaller number of places, right? And the homogeneity that comes with cloud means that we can find technical solutions, as we have in our cloud, to provide robust defense against these attackers. I mean, today, in the old way, where systems are dispersed everywhere, the economics favor the attackers. I just need to find the weakest one. I need to find some crack in some gigantic, mixed mess of heterogeneous systems, right? Well, if all of the defending resources are concentrated together, right, and all the expertise and engineering for building those systems is concentrated together, then yeah, I think the good guys are going to win. I think we're going to be able to defend successfully, the world's most important data.
So you're optimistic?
I am optimistic, totally.
That's great. Well, thank you.